proof, like, you know what I mean?
Makes
Like,
sense, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
when that dynamic arises, well, here's exactly why.
Yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, God.
And it's public record.
We're nothing away.
That
I don't believe that.
Okay, we're live.
Live.
Welcome to the Kennel Council Legislative Committee meeting. It's Monday, June 10th. Do roll call. Councilmember Shannon McHugh.
Here.
Councilmember Katie LaParche.
Hello.
Any corrections, changes, suggestions for the minutes
No.
of the previous meeting? Okay. Is there anybody here to speak publicly? Just state your name and your address for the record.
John Hamill, 20 Gardner Place, apartment 91, here in Oneonta. The two questions that I have are, could we increase the members of the commissions for our commissions, like from whatever they are to what have you, just increase more community involvement? And the other one is, can commissioners set up their own term length instead of having it being said to them, like whether it's 3 years or what have you, based on whatever the commissioners see fit to their schedule, or if they have personal health concerns or what have you?
Okay. Have you read the charter?
Yes.
And you didn't see your answer in there?
I did, but
You disagree with it?
yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I actually missed the first part of your statement. Would you mind me stating it?
If we can increase the number of people serving on the commissions for more community involvement.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to talk? Okay. Connie, is there any correspondence?
None.
And Katie, is your industry expert here?
No, so I spoke to her on the phone, and she's actually traveling. So we talked for a little while, and she gave me some insight into the things that she had wanted to talk about. We're gonna meet when she gets back so that she can share some other things with me. But she said that she was willing to come to a meeting. Bless you, just couldn't make it to this one.
Okay.
So I think, if we're still talking about it at the next one, I'll invite her at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I do have some notes from that, so.
So just for referencing, we have Corey Rowe and Elsa Bozzetti here tonight for industry experts locally.
Thank you for coming.
And I don't want to assume anything, but at some point, have you, either one of you, ever read the New York City filming regulations and or legislation? And the same for the city of Saratoga Springs?
No, we have not read those specific regulations. I'm sure the ones for the city are exorbitant.
Actually, it seems quite condensed.
Nice. So I can't reference it. No, I have not actually read them.
Okay, so having heard what we've been talking about for the last couple of meetings, I would just like to get from your perspective and be able to take some notes from what you guys are expecting from this committee on this piece of legislation.
Sure thing. So this all kind of started from an idea, at least our perspective of this, shooting a movie 2 summers ago on Spruce Street in the city of Oneonta after 10 p.m. So we were shooting a scene and it required us to shoot for many hours during the night. A lot of people in that area got nervous as to what was going on with the lights and the cars and all the people. So they called the cops. The cops showed up and inquired into what we were doing. We informed them of what we were doing. And they said, you guys don't have a permit for this. We're like, no, I don't believe there's any avenue that we can get a permit to do such a thing on a city street at night.
Okay.
And so we, at that time, members of that production were also members of the Film Commission, Film Otsego. And so we said, hey, we should probably work on instituting some form of permitting process so that we can have the right to film on a city street after hours and not have the cops call on us. And if they are, then they can respond to the person complaining that they have a permit, they're in the right place, they followed the proper paperwork, they'll be done at X, Y, and Z, and inform them of whatever questions that they have at that time. And so that was just kind of as basic as it could get from there. And then over the years, the projects have kind of gotten more complex, budgets have gotten a little bit bigger, to where we've inquired into the use of city property, city personnel, and we wanted to make sure that the city was compensated for the use of those assets, and we were given the legal right to do so, so that everybody benefited from this industry, which is the film industry. It is growing in the county of Otsego and specifically the city of Oneonta. We've filmed 5 movies in the last 5 years. We just completed another one. We have films scheduled for the next 4 years into the future. And so we just want to make sure that Oneonta and the city of Oneonta specifically is open for business as far as filmmaking. And there's nothing in the way that's going to impede us from making films safely and permitted by the city. And so our intent was to have a conversation with you all about instituting a permitting process that was beneficial for the filming industry, but also protected the health and safety of the citizens of the city of Oneonta. So that's where we're coming from.
So when you were speaking, I heard 2 points that were brought up at those 2 municipalities within their pieces of legislation. So one was noise. So originally 2 years ago, there was a concern by the neighbors potentially by noise. The second one was you started requesting city assets.
Correct.
And those seem to be indicators of what commercial filming is all about. I think that was a point that we were talking about 2 weeks ago was what is the definition of commercial filming? I think Greg mentioned in a meeting before that was, well, what if, you have on your own family property and you're filming something, does that mean you have to get a permit? And so that's why I sent those 2 pieces to you because it really talks about it. In fact, I think Saratoga took theirs from New York City. I'm going to assume that that's how it went because they're mimicking the same verbiage. So I guess I have your letter to us from a few weeks ago, back in May. If you would take a look at the legislation for those 2 pieces, or at least their permitting process and that verbiage that's there, I would appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Because I think we were kind of getting stumped as committee members of what are the parameters of what we're actually trying to encompass. You're absolutely right. We want to have filming done here in the historic Oneonta, but we also want to be able to make sure that we don't have, residents not knowing. I think communication was probably the largest part that we're trying to hone in on. And it's not about fees, it's just about making sure we cover the bases. So I think once you guys look at those 2 pieces, you'll really know probably where we're headed with all this.
For sure. And I mean, the main thing after reading the proposed ordinance that you guys have and are working on was the timing overnight. Is limiting film or knocking out film permanently from 12 p.m. to 6 a.m. will kill business completely. I mean, we allow people to drink till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. here, but filming is supposed to stop at midnight. The productions that we do and the business that we bring to Otsego County through these films, largely they are low-budget horror films. And the thing about low-budget horror films is they largely need to be shot at night. And in order to shoot even a 2-minute scene in a night scene can take up to 12 hours depending on props and makeup and effects and all those different things. And so we desperately need filming to be allowed 24 hours with permit, of course, with guidance. And by no means am I asking for filmmakers to run them up throughout the city. I'm just asking you to leave within your proposed ordinance the ability for anything to be approved via the permitting process to a safe limit. And that's just to keep business flowing and also to protect the residents and different things of that nature. But I will, to respond to your comment, absolutely read those pieces of legislation from those 2 municipalities and compare it to what you guys are trying to do.
Right, and so the noise ordinance, Katie, didn't you ask about the noise ordinance at one point? If you go to Saratoga Springs, that's one of the first highlights that they have is a permit is required for all commercial filming outside of the noise ordinance hours. So they've listed the hours, I don't think.
Ours is 24 hours a day.
Right, it's just about the audible or the
Reasonable.
decibels, right?
It just says reasonable.
Reasonable. It also goes on to say a permit is required if a production plans to use special effects, explosive, and similar devices. The use of fireworks within Saratoga Springs requires specific approval via a city firework application. And then it keeps on going. And I think we addressed those issues in the permitting process, if I remember correctly, right? But what I thought was interesting is it said outside the noise ordinance, and I do remember from your letter that you had mentioned, you kill filming for Oneonta if we don't allow you to film all night.
Well, it's again, within a permitting process, make sure everybody understands, if I I don't think we would ever want to create a situation where you have to have explosions on a city street at 4 AM. That would be horrible for everybody involved. And you would have to find some other way to do that. And I mean, you know, we weren't creating a large amount of noise, we were just existing on the street at night and just your regular level of noise that comes from doing such thing.
Right.
But Hurt, I understand where you're coming from, and I hear from that legislation very specific and pointed things, and I think that's, you know, exactly what we need to do, is just highlight, these are the things that you need to do, these are the things that don't need a permit, and, you know, and there we go.
Yeah, because it says right in here, in New York City it was similar, permits are not required for casual photographers, tourists, or credentialized members of the media.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of our conversation, I think Don brought that up, if I remember correctly. Productions using handheld cameras, props, or equipment, a camera on a tripod, not asserting exclusive use of city property. So again, back to your second point that you brought up, not using prop weapons, prop vehicles, stunts, actors in police uniform, and not requesting parking privileges for production vehicles do not need a permit. And I think those were of interest to me because we were looking for qualifiers of what is commercial production, and we were all kind of struggling, so I thought this was kind of giving us some of those answers. So, Cornelissa, from your perspective and what I've just read, do you hear anything that would be objective?
No,
within the
in
local
fact, I
industry?
agree with exactly what you just read, because if you're holding a camera handheld, that's simple, you're just a casual photographer. Once you take a tripod out, I mean, tripods are big, now you're building a rig, and you're putting stuff on top of the camera, you're turning into a production very quickly. But just a tripod doesn't warrant it. If you do have any of those reasons that they just listed, it could confuse the public, it could alarm the public, and that's a good reason to have a permit. So I mean, identifying fireworks and people in police uniforms and requesting public spaces, basically all those are great reasons to need a permit. But if it's just 3 kids running around with a camera and, you know, holding one light, they got an actor and a microphone, I don't think that qualifies as something that should require a permit.
Right, and I noticed that from the 2 municipalities, they stayed out of what we were kind of all going down the same path of, like production crew sizes and trying to define that. And I think that was a wormhole that we were all sliding into, and so this kind of brings us back up into the light and allows us the ability to move forward with this. So we have time until our next meeting for you guys to kind of go through this and come up with any questions, and that'll give time for Katie's industry expert to come, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I have a couple comments / questions. So, with regard to shooting overnight, are you suggesting that there would be like a differentiation in the permitting process? So you would specify whether your shoot was during the day or at night, or
I mean, I guess
a
it
mixture
depends
of
on the
those
permitting
hours?
process itself. If you're
Right.
getting, it depends on how the city wants to run it, you know, but in my opinion, you get a film permit. And each film permit can be different. Your film permit can cover X, Y, and Z. And so you get a film permit, I need to film on Oneida Street in the hours of 4 to 8, right? And so you get a permit, and then you have a film on Oneida Street would be the city. Sorry, I got that wrong, but
That's
you get my
okay.
point.
I was waiting to you.
But the point is that you need a permit for that specific thing, because that's the thing about production, is every production request is different.
Right.
And you'll never get the same request twice. One person's gonna need this for this, and someone's gonna need something different. So I would cover CYA, and then through the things, identifying what does need a permit and what doesn't, and then making sure that if a production is gonna use any of those items, that they know that they need a permit and they get a permit. Much like film insurance, are you gonna use props, are you gonna use stunts, are you gonna use firearms, are you gonna use explosions, are you gonna use vehicles? Any of that stuff makes the production much more dangerous, and safety is always #1 concern. So I would, if it was me, I would, but again, I'm not running the city, I don't know the clerical side of that, of what it would take to operate an individual permit for each thing. I can also flip-flop that again and say there's not gonna be that many requests for permits. So it's not something that's gonna be very labor intensive.
So my understanding is that the film commissioner generally would connect with a film crew to like hook them up with the permitting process, right, and kind of lead them through it. Okay.
That is how it's been working. They normally reach out to either the film commission or Otsego Media, which is largely one and the same. And then have a conversation about what they're trying to acquire, and then we go out and find those things. So we've had productions that are looking for locations, we've had productions that are looking for personnel, and you know, different things of that nature. So, you know,
Okay, cool.
we'll try to meet them together.
One of the things that I liked about one of the places that I had looked at, is, in Ithaca, they have like another level to their film permitting process. They have like, you know, the regular, oh, interesting. Okay, sorry. So I just noticed something there too that I had noticed in a different municipality, but they have requests for film shoots on city property that include violence or the use of prop or real weapons must accompany a request to film on city property. The COI must state coverage for the violence or use of a proper weapon. You know, we may limit it, blah, blah, blah. And then also they require approval, not just by the permitting process, but also by express approval by the police department, which I think is cool. Cause like like you said, if you're out on Spruce Street at 4 in the morning with prop weapons, people are gonna be freaking out. They also do something that we had talked about at our last meeting, which is to submit letters of permission from adjacent or impacted private property owners. It doesn't have to be done at the time of the application, but prior to beginning to film. Because we were talking about, you know, having some sort of public comment period if it's something where it's going to be affected.
Right.
But you know, we could say, I forgot how far we said, 100 feet maybe is far, but you know, using judgment, we could figure out how far away we want those to be. So those are helpful. And then the other thing that I thought was cool is that they do that, both them and Albany, I think, maybe it's Hudson Valley, request that students who are looking to film productions connect with both the municipality, the commission, and the school in order to be carried under like the school's insurance rider, which would potentially allow them to do like sort of bigger scale things in the city, which I thought sounded kind of interesting. So those were, I think, probably the most interesting things that I read. The rest of it is kind of boilerplate, it seems like. Yeah, oh, and they said that, you know, if you are going to, you know, block right of way, the one in Ithaca says if you're gonna block the pedestrian right of way that you have to like accommodate pedestrian traffic flow, but I don't even know if that's necessary, if there were like signs that said, you know, this area is closed, please go around or whatever. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I read that I thought was kind of interesting.
Sharon?
Well, I guess I'm just curious, so have you shot elsewhere other than Oneonta?
Yes, of course.
And so when you shoot in other places, what are the rules around notifying those?
Well, I want to just return to her points real quick.
Okay.
Productions are used to jumping through any hoops necessary, and that's all I'm saying in my letter as well, is keep it open for business, and as long as there's a way to permit through it. And so if you want the police to review a plan that includes firearms, great, then let's do that.
Right.
If you want a police officer on site the entire time that prop weapons are being used for a scene, that's completely reasonable, and you have the full authority to institute that, and the production should pay for that officer.
Yeah.
Totally cool there too.
Okay.
As long as there's a pathway to get through.
Okay.
Because that's what you want to do, is just completely facilitate business coming through. Because if we ever do get lucky enough to get a multi-million-dollar film to come into our area, we want to have the proper pathways for them to do what they need to do.
I know, you're like, we don't wanna have explosions on Spruce Street, and I'm like, well, maybe
Maybe
if
we
like,
do.
you know,
We got some
Ryan
Johnny
Johnson
Rockets.
wants to
It's
come,
not
like,
gonna
maybe we do
happen,
want explosions on Spruce Street.
Yeah,
We try to not be on Spruce Street
Yeah.
ever, so it's,
Okay.
you know, again, but.
but each municipality is different, to
Yeah.
return to your question, and each one has different levels of different things. So I've worked all the way from northern New York, where there's nothing, like you can just go out and do whatever you want, nobody cares, to shooting into LA, where you need to get a permit for every step that you take. And larger cities absolutely have a permitting process in place to keep the health and safety of their citizens as a priority, and I'm not saying the city shouldn't do that. All I'm saying is let's find the middle ground where we can allow business to continue while keeping residents safe and happy.
Okay, let me reframe the question. What I was asking was the notification of citizens, like if you're filming on Spruce Street, I know you don't want to, but if you're filming on Spruce Street, would in other municipalities, are we knocking on doors or
No,
maybe?
so you give out letters.
Or
Letter.
Yeah, you
doing
normally have to do letters, some places require, certified mail to prove that you mailed it or something like that. Sometimes you need a signature from everybody, or you need to do a hearing, a public hearing, you need to do a media post that something's happening, you're responsible for paying for the publication, the public's responsible for learning about it, they show up if anybody's opposed to it, then you can discuss it, if there's enough people opposed to it, they could shoot it down, they could make the production amend their plan, change it, shoot it somewhere else, shoot exteriors there and do close-ups somewhere else. And that's the thing about film production, is there's so many different ways to skin a cat that it's like, let's just talk about what's needed and then figure out what the problem is and try to how to circumvent that.
When we did Ouija, which for example on State Street, I knocked on people's doors
Very
and
good.
called neighbors that I knew lived in that area, and that's how we did that.
We just make
So,
sure everybody was
I was like,
informed, you know?
hey, we're gonna be here, and everybody was pretty cool with it, but that's probably not the best way to handle it moving forward.
No, but I mean, a certified letter, I mean, the same thing as getting an apartment or Airbnb. You've got to let everybody know that you're gonna have a hearing to turn your apartment into an Airbnb, so then everybody has a chance to speak against it. And I mean, film permitting shouldn't be very different.
So can we talk about the insurance process?
Oh, yes, that was a good process. I just wanted to touch on that too,
Sure.
because inside of film production insurance, using a firearm, even a dummy one, is a big deal, especially after production rust. And so nowadays, if there is any productions with firearms at all, I mean, there's a much higher level of insurance, there's much higher levels of safety that are, I mean, they want to see the firearms, they want to see that they're glued shut, they want to see that it's incapable of firing, they want to, I mean, you really have to go through several steps to use a firearm in a production at this point.
And the insurance company sends
And
out
the
the
insurance,
representatives to do that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
or send pictures most of the time, you know, that kind of a thing. Because then if you lie and then you use a different firearm, that's insurance fraud, so, you know, you don't want to do that.
Yikes.
And then how did it go with the insurance policy when you partnered with the city staff on the last production?
Super easy, because I mean, we weren't doing anything that was crazy. We were just doing a staged event outside of a location. We were able to, they gave us the minimums on what they needed for insurance. We provided that to our insurance company and met our insurance. And we have through Abacus, we have a dashboard where we can issue COIs, no issue. So we just get the information and you guys, and at the last page of each of those COIs is a verification page where you can call a number, make sure that it verifies the information that I told you and that the policy stands up to the numbers that I told you that it did.
And then,
And if it includes firearms.
okay. And then also, when you start using city assets, the insurance coverage for that.
The insurance coverage covers that as well. We have, you know, it issues, one of the options, once I issue a COI from Abacus is, it's whether it's a city government, city official, city property, any of those different things. So it rewrites the COI, because it's pretty generic at this point, for that specific entity. And again, the insurance company works with me from the get-go to make sure that we have the minimums that are standard 1 million, 2 million, those kind of things. And on this most recent production, we were working with SUNY Oneonta, who had even higher minimums than the city did, so we were already well over where we needed to be.
So the 2 million didn't seem unreasonable?
No, that's, I mean, in insurance, that's completely, that's boilerplate.
You guys have any other question?
No, I was gonna ask about insurance, but you didn't.
Katie, you all set?
No, but it's helpful to talk about and just continue to think about.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.
Of course, I would, as you get closer towards your final ordinance, I'd love to review it, because there is safety stop gates the city can put in place to make sure that they are properly insured, that they are notifying the right people about firearms and explosions and pyrotechnics and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you for going down this road, thank you for exploring and having an open conversation, and thank you for supporting film in Otsego County.
Thank you for coming.
I was gonna say,
Talking to
thank you
us.
for coming. I'm sure you were busy doing something.
It's fine.
Feed the kids.
Not really. But thank
All
you.
good, of
Yeah,
course, no, we
please let
appreciate
us
it.
know if we can do
Cool.
anything or answer any
Yeah.
questions.
All right, thank you all.
You know how to
Thank
get in
you.
touch with me?
Cool, have a good
Leave the
night.
hard bench.
Yeah, it's, we could use the.
Oh, someone, is that your phone?
My phone, okay. Oh, that's Corey's phone.
Thank you.
I got it.
Bye.
Bye.
Must be the day for it.
I can check with Nyla to see what their recommendations are for insurance levels if you'd like me to.
Yeah, I think, if I could just say one thing, it's like, once we get where we're going with this film permitting situation, I think dedicating a portion of our website to filming in Oneonta would be great, with the application that could potentially just be submitted online. And then also information about, our film commission, like directing people to Film Otsego so that they know, what's going on there. And then, information about the New York State tax credits for filming that's available.
Okay. Yeah, I agree, it definitely needs to be on the website and
Yeah.
moved out to other social media platforms so that people know what to expect, so they can get it done early on. I will move on to fee schedule then.
Okay.
We left off on page 10.
Before we get started, actually, can I just do a little segue about the fee schedule situation?
Sure.
Thanks. So, Corey was mentioning that if a police, officer was necessary, that, that would be good for safety, and then also that we should bill the film commission or the film company appropriately for their time. I also read in, did I get rid of it? Oh, it's on my phone. In Ithaca, so I have been looking everywhere to answer the big question, right? Which is, how do people delineate who gets charged a fee and who does not get charged a fee? And as far as I can tell, people don't. They just charge the fees. So I had pulled up the fee schedule for the city of Ithaca, and let's see, sorry, I think I got a little bit, special event permits in the city of Ithaca. Oh gosh, where's the fee schedule? They bill for, they have a straight fee, just like we do, for staff time, so they bill for DPW time. It says you can either get volunteers to fill these roles, right, like moving barricades, et cetera, or you can pay these fees. They have fees for, DPW moving barricades and stuff is like $70 an hour, it's billed. If you have to put up no parking signs, it's $50 per city block. There's a specific fee for police, that's not much more, and maybe that's what we wanna do, is just figure out, rather than, because right now the public safety portion of the fee schedule is pretty complex. It's like, you need this and this and this and this, but maybe we figure out, if you need the assistance of our fire department at level A, which includes blah, 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 then it's this much per hour. Maybe that simplifies it, makes it a little bit more uniform. But yeah, it looks like they just,
How did,
kind of charge everybody.
So you're suggesting, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
how did you know that though?
how did I know what?
If somebody went to our city website, they would think the same thing, that we're charging for special events and this is what we charge for all the way down through. So how did you know that they're not charging,
Well, like,
or that they are charging everybody?
I guess because it doesn't say anywhere on their website that they are not, that these fees don't apply to 501c3 or whatever, or it's at our discretion, or that language is nowhere. Both Ithaca and Albany are the two municipalities that I checked out.
So are we saying that for non-for-profits, that we would charge them the same fees?
Well, I don't know, I think that's the question that we're trying to answer, is like, how do we define who we're going to charge and who we're not? And I think one thing that I thought of was, if you have a specific organizational structure, then you've kind of gone the extra mile, that is costly. You know, maybe we don't charge 501c3 and similar, for public safety, but I don't know, that's up to the committee, that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, I think it's a tough.
Yeah.
I think it's a tough question to find an answer to.
A lot of these organizations, like, who do provide services and extracurricular activities are not city commissions or city related. And so they bring in a lot of bodies, and so it could be our way of being involved and, you know, part of what they're doing and then making it a part city of Oleana event, because we are sponsoring you by not charging you for these fees, in a way.
Sorry, so I found it. So they say there's $100 permit application fee for special events. Organizers have the option of providing volunteers or paying the city to pick up, set up, and break down barricades, traffic cones, and no parking signs except on state highways. Traffic control, crossing guards, trash recycling, compost collection, and disposal. Failure to provide agreed upon volunteers at the dates, times will result in responsibility for costs at the rate set forth below and a $200 fine for non-performance. $70 per hour for public works. Delivery and pickup of barricades is $35 per hour. DPW can pick up trash at $4 per bag. So I'm not opposed to like what you're saying. I'm thinking that if we know what these things are, they should at least be worked out for each event so that we know like what our in-kind donation is. And that could be, you know,
Start.
a start. It does also say events with unpaid financial obligations, so the city will not be considered for future events, which I think is a good policy.
I'm gonna use my hard copy.
I wish
I know
I
we-
had a hard
I know we
copy.
run into problems when we try to flip back and forth,
I think I
so,
took mine home, which
Where
is really
is,
helpful.
yeah,
what, use the digital, just,
I wish I had.
I'm starting off with parks, athletic, facility rentals, that's the page that I'm looking at. So I don't know, digitally, that's page 10. This is a hard copy that, Carrie gave us a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I wish I had mine.
Well, can I help you with that?
Thank you, could we both have a
Can you see or no?
I don't know if we can read.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm gonna just pull mine up on my,
I can go downstairs and print you some if you'd like.
Bonnie, are you
That's-
trying to get it up on
I
this?
can, if that one,
Sure.
you'll see it.
Yeah.
I just have to be patient.
it's not easy to find.
I mean, we have our own hard copy, they're just at home, right? So
Correct,
No
yeah,
sense of
I-
killing another tree.
Yeah, that's what I think for me, at least. Mine is at home. Fee schedule. It's not easy to find, Dan, just to be honest. It's not there. Oh, there it is. It's at page 9.
10.
I don't think I can get it as big as what you need it, so we'll see.
Okay, parks fees.
I don't know how to get it any bigger than that, unless somebody else has the magic calendar.
Wait a minute, there's no fee listed here for tennis, but I know that we charge for the tennis courts.
I know, thank you.
I know we do, because I've paid that bill.
Next page.
Next page,
What page you on?
10. Parks Athletic Facilities Rental.
It's right below NEMA, pickleball, basketball, volleyball, over tennis.
Yes, correct. I don't see anything. Do you have something there?
I think that's all of these things
Oh,
are,
gotcha.
yeah, so whether it's youth or adult,
Got it.
so like carbon,
Depends on who you
25
are.
or whatever.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Sure.
holidays, you know, the most I guess.
No, it's not.
Thank you.
10, I get to the top. You're gonna bring yourself to sneak here pretty soon.
Thank you.
Then I'll leave it.
Shannon, can you see it?
I can.
Okay, because there's no way I could. All right, so Greg was just explaining that the rates are starting on youth organization 18 and under,
Mm-hmm.
going down, and they apply to the courts that are listed above, correct?
So I understand that the intention of this is to encourage kids to play sports. My question is not really whether or not we should raise these fees, but whether they take into account, like, I guess what I wanna know is like, what are all the things that staff does in order to facilitate the use of these
Fees.
facilities? And what does that cost, and how do we spread that out over the users?
Right.
Cause I know it's not just locking and unlocking, you know? We recently resurfaced those courts in Dover Park.
Are you
Potentially we should have.
looking to cover the cost of having these facilities?
No, but reasonableness is, I think, what we're going
I
for.
mean, resurfacing the pickleball facility in Emo Park and the tennis facility in Dover Park was like $125,000, something like that. Would never come close to covering that.
$125,000 to resurface a pickleball court?
Yeah, that's not even the asphalt. That's
Several of
the,
them.
well, that's the whole pickleball facility and the whole tennis facility.
Right,
And
so
lower.
that's like
And walk in lower.
eight courts or.
There's 7, well, 8 if you include, there's 7 tennis courts plus the non-court.
Flex
And then
space.
yeah, flex, family space. And then there's the 8 pickleball courts.
So the open play on the pickleball courts, that's kind of organized, do we charge those folks?
It's just organized through the group of pickleball players.
So then, when I'm looking at the adult/other $100 for days 1 through 9, that would be something like Otsego County Chamber pickleball tournament?
No, I think there's no fee.
No, it's below it.
The fee is for softball, soccer, baseball fields.
No, it's for all of them. I asked that question already. So all of those facilities up top have the fee structure that begins with youth and then adult college.
Why wouldn't we just, okay.
Yeah,
Cause
it's confusing, for sure, the way it's
maybe we
formatted.
should put $25.
Or like 25 to 125 in
Mhm.
each of them, and then have it say youth through softball field.
We can reformat the fee schedule, to be more clear.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
So like an example of adult others, so if there's an adult, if there were an adult softball league or something that's reserving the field for their exclusive use.
Yeah.
If someone had reserved the pickleball courts for their exclusive use and they showed up and the community pickleball group was there, they could, kick them and say, hey, we reserved the court, that would be the difference.
How does it go with the contract though, Greg? On the softball field number 4 with the lights contract? Is that typically, like if you, depending on if it's a tournament, is that what you guys are trying to go after the fee here?
If lights are gonna be involved, there's
Sure.
obviously higher costs, so just turning those on once incurs a demand charge, so that's something that we would do similar to the Damasky Field, or a contract that defines what those costs are. So if we had a contract with the high school or the middle school or Harvard College or someone to play there,
Okay.
we would have an actual contract as opposed to, you can't really define it in a fee schedule.
Right. So to Katie's point, because I was thinking the same thing, is so that contract takes in the hard cost of what it is for city staff along with utilities, maintenance.
It could. I mean, the costs that we charge for Demaski Field does not cover the city's full cost of having Demaski Field or maintaining it. It's an agreed upon amount that was determined to be reasonable, something that both parties would agree to.
Okay.
It would be the same. I don't think we have a contract for softball at this point, so it would be similar. And I doubt that, you really couldn't charge for the full cost of the facility. It would be unreasonable for whoever it is trying to rent it.
Right,
Yeah, of course.
and refresh my memory, baseball field number 6, that's the one over by the skate,
That's the nice baseball field. That's
Yeah.
not Demaski over by the skate park.
but it's over by the skate park, right?
Yeah, it's fenced. We just redid the infields.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, asking about like infrastructure improvements is not so much about what those infrastructure improvements cost, but about the fact that like there was an improvement made, and so that's a good opportunity to potentially bump the rates to allow for some of that to be recouped. And I'm not talking about making them $100 from 25, but like 27 from 25. I think anytime we invest in our infrastructure, obviously we're providing a service to people. But the facility is better than it was when we were charging 25, So I think, yeah, that's sort of where I was going with that. But I think in terms of thinking about what costs should be included, right? It's like mowing and paint and water and grass seed and whatever, I mean, those kind of things that aren't astronomical. They aren't $100,000, but they do go into the maintenance of that specific facility. Could they be broken out in a way that is, administrative fees, right, are meant to be based on the amount of work that it takes to process something for non-compliance for code, so it's the same idea in the park. Instead of us just being like, yeah, we think it should cost $25, like having some idea of why we're charging $25, I think makes sense for us and for people who pay the fees. It's not just an arbitrary thing. So that's sort of what I'm trying to understand.
So, Greg, going back to baseball field number 6, is that rate per day, per tournament, per week? What is that?
That's all per day, so it's all in that
Per
same
day?
column.
Yeah. So it'd be like
Oh, it
$900
matches up with
for
above,
9 days.
okay.
And then $910 for.
The pavilions, I don't know who's stepping up for
The pavilion.
blue, so.
Pavilion rentals are done by the clerk's office.
Are these numbers okay? I mean,
Bonnie, if you have any input on pavilion rentals?
In this case, are we updating the,
What we are seeing in our office and what we're now doing is if somebody wants to rent a pavilion and they say they're a city resident, we're asking for ID. In the past, we have not.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of people come in and reserve for a friend or someone to get the reduced rate. So we were seeing a lot of lost revenue in that aspect.
so they're circumventing or flanking, okay?
So what we're
Do we need
doing
to
is
change the
taking
policy for proof of residency that only the individual can sign it? Rather than somebody signing it for a friend?
and more so over, no, you wouldn't be able to do that.
The person that is the applicant is responsible for the date of the event.
Right.
So they're taking ownership, but that's what we're thinking.
So if I understand you correctly, a non-resident is coming in and saying, I'm filling out this application on behalf of a resident so that they get the lower rate.
Or they say they're a city resident, and before we never ask for proof of that.
Good for that.
Or a lot of times people are confused if they have an Oneonta address, they think they're a city resident. They could be a town of Oneonta
Right.
person, but because they have an Oneonta address, they think they're a city resident.
What have you used or asked for proof of residency?
Their driver license or a utility bill with their name and address on it.
So you're saying you're not asking for proof of residency anymore?
We are.
Oh, you
We
are?
were not in the past, we
Oh,
are
I'm
now.
sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay, good. The portable bandstand rental, do you have any interest in that this year, or?
It's for, like Juneteenth, or certain events, we'll do the bandstand.
Okay.
It's not used a lot, and the condition of the bandstand is, we don't take it out of city. Or the rentals.
And then I see the portable toilet is cost plus $25. Aren't we doing
I have so
like
many
an
questions.
annual on that? I thought we were doing,
Yeah, and I thought we were gonna raise the rates on the stuff up there, we went forward, I missed it.
Or at least just like understand what,
the actual costs are.
Why, okay, so having just looked up, that's what I was doing, looking up other places to rent out pickleball courts. And they say that it's basically between 35 and 75 an hour for an outside court.
35 to 75?
Yeah. Is like the general, that 25 is pretty low.
If there's a staff member that would want to chime in on this to, not tonight, but for future talk, so kind of take a look at these prices to see if that's,
Yeah, I mean, pickleball court, there's not a whole lot of regular maintenance that's going into that. Depending on what you want to include. You want to include restriping, resurfacing the court, that's a maintenance, but it's not an everyday or every usage thing, that's every few years.
Right.
Number of years.
My
I
thing
just
is
wanna
how
talk
many
about-
people actually rent the pickleball court?
I think probably that tournament, I'm not sure, I'd have to check with Wood to see, or maybe look at our financial records to see if we've had anybody do it, but I don't think anyone is really. They just show up and they play, and
Right.
amongst themselves determine who's next.
right, so it's always open
Just
play.
pick up, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like basketball court.
the tennis courts do get rented, like fully rented
By the OHS
by
teams
OHS
and
and
other.
Hartwick. Actually, Hartwick chose not to this year, I'm not sure why, but they do generally rent them. Hartwick does for, not the entire season, but last year they made it into semifinals or something, so they used them for practice. And then they rented them pretty exclusively during the semifinal. I think they actually held the semifinals there. Yeah, and OHS does, and it's a steal compared to what the tennis club charges. So, just so you know that. Per day.
You know, something like the softball fields, baseball fields, it's more difficult, there's more that goes into that, there's more field prep.
Yeah.
You know, the cost
For
of
sure.
paint, we buy it in bulk, you know, we'd have to just kind of guesstimate.
Right.
You know, be an exercise for somebody.
Right, so do you feel that the prices that are here before us represent that time and effort that the city staff are putting into it?
I haven't done that analysis, I'd have to dig into that, I think they're reasonable for what people are willing to pay for these things. I know that they have been adjusted, it's been a few years, a number of, maybe 5 years, I'm not sure.
Yeah, cause I rented the large pavilion for another like nonprofit organization thing. And I wanna say I paid the same amount, and that was like before COVID.
Yeah.
So I feel like,
It's time to raise?
I mean, I think that,
and we're not talking about crazy, I'm sorry.
yeah, no,
We're just, you know,
yeah,
because the cost of doing business has gone up, the cost of maintenance has gone up. I think our fee should follow, like you were suggesting.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, you know, I think I wanna be objective and have a reason for why we're doing it. But if we're gonna raise all these by $2 and you're gonna have someone focus on figuring out how much it costs, maybe we're kind of just offsetting like the cost of staff time, like doing something else to figure out how much these fees should be. Maybe we should just guesstimate them. And I agree, like I wouldn't wanna raise them astronomically, but I think if we can figure out what's reasonable, you know, based on just even a guess of like, okay, Chris can tell us that, one person spends 8 hours a week mowing the fields, that person's wage is whatever, I mean, that's 5 minutes, that's not,
Right.
you know, we don't have to go down to the gallons of paint that we use, but if we could say, you know, maybe we spend a gallon of paint a summer and they're $5 a gallon, I mean, it doesn't have to be like to the penny, but if we have an idea of like what it is, then we know whether or not it's reasonable, but I think Shannon raises a good point, which is like, they should probably be steadily, incrementally going up anyway, as other things do, because it's the same idea for parking, like, taxpayers are paying for this unless we put it toward a user fee to the people who are using it, because we have to pay, somebody has to pay to maintain it, and right now we're spreading that across all taxpayers. But if there are people who rent it and they can, you know, support it directly through a fee, then that's good. So I think that's kind of my take on that. Yeah, I mean, everything is going up. So,
With the 2 weeks before we meet again, Greg, would that give your staff enough time to kind of take a look at this page?
We'll do our best.
Well,
Today, we'll talk to Chris and see, we can come up with something, so.
well,
There's
I
not
mean,
much time to work.
why can't we just like choose fees?
we can.
Well, because we really don't know what the cost of seed and all the labor is. I have no idea what the hourly rates for the
So
employees are.
you're concerned, like, if we bump this up to 27, that may be enough of an
It
increase?
might not be enough. I mean, we're asking to,
That would be 8%.
right, we really don't know what our true costs are in setting up the
Okay.
fields or the courts.
Okay.
I mean, if we just random pick a percentage, like Don just showed me 10%, if we just 10%, do we know if that really covers our costs? I don't know, if they haven't been adjusted in 5
Yeah, we
years.
have a long time, because I paid the same amount for the.
Right, so with that 10%, would $55 cover all the costs instead of $50? I don't know,
It'd be better than nothing.
or a poke in the eye.
Yes.
Can I ask, are you looking to potentially change fees now, like mid-year, or looking at this as part of the budget process?
I think it would help our budget process if we looked at our fees now, so we would know. So
I mean, like-
Jenny would know going in that there's potentially more revenue.
Would you implement them January 1st, 2025, or would you implement them, you know, July 1st if you?
I think that's a conversation we should have as, you know, staff and.
It just could inform how much effort we need to put into this right now in the next 2 weeks, or, you know, depending on workloads.
Well, I think we're down to just a few pages. We were good with what we've worked on so far, right?
I wasn't here the last time, so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I think,
Everybody who was here, we did have a couple of.
right, we need to figure out the special events, primarily the
And that's more of an
public safety.
implementation structure and a fee
Correct.
structure.
A lot of them. I mean, there's some vacants there.
So it seems that there's a lot of renting that's already happened.
There's a lot of what?
Like, a lot of the renting has already happened, so I'm not sure.
Stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, we probably should wait till the close of like, at least the pavilion season.
which is our,
October? Okay, that was in September, but yeah, because, yeah, how are you gonna say like, oh, by the way, your fee changed for
Yeah.
September, you know?
The only thing I know is that, one of the bathrooms, I think it was at Wilbur Park, they had to redo because of the damage to the toilets and such. So you have to incorporate those kind of repairs too, which the clerk's office would have possibly. So I think you have to collect data from different areas.
Right, and the pavilion rentals I know need maybe a little more attention than anything else, cause they've been,
But maybe
they've
for
been
the
taken advantage of recently.
Yeah,
Let's put it
that's a
that
good way to
way.
put it. So maybe the pavilion, updating the pavilion fees can wait, that can be on pause till after the season.
I'd support that. Cause I think we need to talk about too, like, I know that my impression was that there was sentiment from the outgoing parks administrator that we should possibly stop allowing alcohol in the parks. Just because of the different nature of like the events that happen with alcohol. And I also got that impression from our city clerk last time, just because there have been, like, even with the deposit structure, which they worked really hard to implement, there's still, the pavilions are really being taken advantage of, and that has a ripple effect on, DPW's then up there cleaning up after it, and, we keep the deposit, well, I don't know, have we kept any deposits? Yeah.
Yes.
But there's still, it offsets the cost a little bit, but there's
So
still.
the only thing is that I know literally people who are not supposed to have alcohol there.
Right, but at least it would be illegal. Although, if they have a permit and they're,
Illegal.
right, so like if the police were called, they would be able to be ticketed for that,
Right,
which I know is.
But we have to have people,
Again.
right, but the thing is, who's gonna tell them, like, what are they gonna self-report though? Like, how do we,
Well, you
who's
catch
going
them,
to ensure that that's happening and they're following rules? Do we have like a worker go around and like, or?
but- Well, the police patrol the parks.
Especially when the neighbors call it. So for tonight, I can tell you that on page 13, those fees were good for the department head, which was codes. I was gonna ask Ginny, are we good on page 12 with the fees? Do they match up what your costs are for water sewer services?
I have not had a chance to, meet with Chris, because he hasn't been available.
Okay.
So I will get back to you. But I do have an idea of putting in this fees, if you'd like to hear it.
Yes, I do, just 1 second. The fees for transit, OPT, those bus fares, Dave is good with these?
Yes, yeah, and what we'll do is we will be looking towards the 2025 budget process. We'll be looking to see what the surrounding transit systems are charging, and then because we also have to get it approved by DOT, we can't just do it on our own.
Right, okay, great.
So as of right now, Dave is signing off on these rates.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that takes care of 3 pages that I had left.
I
So to finalize
Can I
answer Greg, your question on page 10, for me, I think it would be a good exercise. We can wait until the end of the year to implement, but I think it would give us a good exercise to find out what our costs are. And is there other ways to generate some revenue? I don't wanna feed people to death, and yes, the parks are part of the city residents and their lifestyle, but we have a lot of people that are coming in from outside of Oneonta using our parks. So in the park committee, do you guys talk about acknowledging that and maybe charging non-residents?
We were actually told by the previous parks administrator that the Parks Commission shouldn't have anything to do with fees.
Right, but, okay,
So no,
so
so
we
no, to
have
answer
something
your
to do with the fee, but so do you guys, did you have that discussion saying that's something that we should pursue, that non-residents be charged some kind of an
No,
amount
we
for
haven't
utilizing our,
We have not discussed fees at all in parks. But that's a nice idea, like if you wanna have a rental and you're not a city resident, maybe we have a discounted rate for city residents. Like if we raise the fees, but then we keep them lower for city residents, that might be a nice way to offset and make it a perk for living here, cause your taxes subsidize your fee, right?
right, that's what I'm
That's a
concerned
nice
about, is
idea.
that all of this, you're just hitting the city residents again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would be totally on board with that, like a lower rate for city residents. Cause then, yeah, I would like to make a suggestion about OPT to consider at budget time. I think that our monthly pass is really expensive, and just based on like San Francisco, I think is like $85. So what I would like to consider, if the DOT would approve it, and of course Dave and people who this really matters to, right, is having higher single-use rates and lower monthly passes. Like if we were able to lower our monthly pass to like $60 or $70, but then raise the single route fees a little bit, that might encourage more consistent bus use.
I'll talk to him about that.
Okay.
The only thing is, I want you to be mindful that we have to have a formula to make sure that we're hitting the minimum for our store.
Okay,
We can't go below the minimum.
okay.
So again, Katie, would that be for a city resident lowering it?
No, the discount would be because you bought a monthly pass, but generally monthly passes would be local people. So it would indirectly benefit.
That would also be very hard to administer them because quite often passes are bought by third parties and distributed to their clients.
Right.
So it would be very hard to administer.
Right, or like on the bus, and then you're showing your ID to the bus driver, that's really hard.
I see where you're going, but yeah, administratively it sounds complicated.
Yeah, not my suggestion, which was to lower the monthly pass rate, which I hope that there's merit in that, because I think that it encourages people to then take the action. No, we got that. Greg might have
So
got
from-
it.
Yeah, I did want that.
Okay.
I broke his smile.
Well, walk us through that a little bit though, Katie. So if you spend $80 a month for a monthly pass, I know nothing about the monthly stuff.
I'm
Been on a
suggesting
bus once.
that you purchase a monthly pass for whatever the minimum is, right? Because we have a minimum, but I was thinking like $60 or $70 would be reasonable, right? That's $2 or $2.50 a day. And then, so that would be a lower monthly pass rate, but then higher individual passes, individual fares. So if you were just taking the bus from here to Cooperstown, instead of it being, I don't know, $1.50, maybe it's $2. And then that offsets the loss in the monthly passes, but maybe more people would buy monthly passes and ride the bus more often, is my thinking.
Also, depending on what our income is, which would be a lot lower socioeconomic population, that's 5 or 6% of your income every month, $80.
Yeah,
So $80 if they actually use the services every single day. It's only $2.67.
still hard to come up with $80 all at once. It's a big bite out of a minimum wage paycheck.
It is.
It's a big bite. So, and those are generally the people who rely on transit to get to work, So if we made the monthly passes cheaper, I think it would be more economical, more equitable, and it would encourage more regular usage. That's my thesis. I haven't tested it yet.
So if you think they use it primarily on or for work, instead of 30 days, that's really less than.
Right, true. Yeah. It's still cheaper than taking a taxi, which a lot of people have to do still to get to work. But it's a big,
So you're gonna work with
Expense.
Dave on that?
I'll work with Dave and I'll look at,
See if it
I'll bring
works.
data so we can have an informed conversation on,
Thank you.
on, the statistics of it.
thank you, I appreciate that.
I just wanna go back to the portable toilet though, Greg. I thought we rented that, I
Yeah,
thought we had a contract or something, so I'm just trying to understand
Yeah, so in the city's budget, we're just providing portable toilets, I forget how many in Niwa and some in Wilbur as well. So if someone were to have an event, or let's say they have a baseball league at Field 6 or wherever, they want an additional toilet rented. I think something like the Sport Wilcox Fields, where there used to be an adult soccer league, they had one there. That might have been something that was covered by this, a fee paid by the user as opposed to just being provided by the city, but I can't say for certain the last time that was used, I don't know. So the ones we're providing now, we're not charging anyone for.
Right, which is interesting, cause it's in, I mean, yeah, so that went over like a lead balloon. That fee schedule, or that fee,
Yeah, it was like $5,000-6,000, if I remember correctly, but.
not per, I think it was like
Not for the whole-
$1,000
for
per,
all of
but for all of them for the year. And it's interesting to come across it in the fee schedule
As
that
a
we're
cost
definitely
per-
not charging for. Yeah,
So,
so maybe, how much do we spend on porta johns each year? For the past 2 years, $5,000 or $6,000?
I thought it was like 5 or 6.
I mean, how much does it cost to? I should know this, cause you gave us information, spec sheets on,
I'd have to go there.
bathroom facilities, but it might just make more sense to build more bathrooms.
So we've left this in here
Oh, yeah, just
primarily
one thing
for
else.
for the remoteness of like other areas other than our 2 parks. Is that why this is still here? Meaning if you had an event up on Main Street and you needed porta johns, is that why this is still in here?
Well, some of the parks in rec section, so I don't think it'd be applicable necessarily to Main Street, but if someone were to request a restroom provided by the city, we would have a fee available to do that, yes.
Well, I mean, Department of Health regulates all that, right? So it's based on the numbers of the event. So if you have an event up on Main
You
Street
regulate it.
and you have a certain amount of people, right, you're supposed to have by Department of Health
I
standards?
suppose someone could use this fee schedule to say, city, I'd like you to provide this and charge me a fee. I don't know if that's been utilized when it was last year.
I was just trying to understand why it was still there.
I think that has to be one.
Yeah, we have not utilized it in a while, and I believe the cost that you were referring to, I'm remembering 7,500, but it could
Oh,
be
for
less
the-
than that. I think it was about 7,500.
There's 8,000 in the budget for 2024.
So,
So,
but I think it's a good thing to leave in there in case we do have a special request. Because it will be in an area that we don't normally supply them.
gotcha.
Well, unless
So-
there's another page that you want to go back and go through, I think we're done with the fee schedule.
I have another quick question about the porta johns. If we were to charge this fee, which is cost plus 25, would that include someone like placing or is this just for our facilitation of, like, is someone from DPW putting a porta john on a truck and taking it
They're
there?
calling the company, they're
Okay.
coming and dropping it off, and then they service it usually once a week,
Okay, that's
or if it's
reasonable
just for a
then.
weekend or.
Okay, cool, thank you. Len, trying to give us something.
Before you get off the fee schedule, can I just throw an idea out there for the public safety fees? Just for
Oh, sorry,
consideration.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know we're trying to figure out a policy and how to implement it, and I just wanted to throw an idea out there to consider charging the fees when the event is not being held on city property and/or when the event is closed to the public. That way, it gives you a criteria of when the fee becomes active and when it does not. If our goal is to still provide all the public safety services to what we call our city events, like the 4th of July and Memorial Day weekend and Juneteenth and things like that, that way it just kind of gives you an idea to consider, where if it's on private property such as the high school, Hartwick College, SUNY, maybe the Sixth Ward Athletic Club, wherever there might be an event that needs our assistance, but it's on private property, or if it is on public property, but it's closed to the public, then it's something to consider.
I think that's an excellent strategy. Cause it's not for public benefit then. Yeah,
But would that be kids' birthday parties at the pavilion?
no, this is about, public safety,
Oh.
like having the fire department there. Which you could do, but you would pay them. You'd be like, hey, can you come show the kids the fire truck?
I wanna give big ups to the fire department because they came to our event and we did not get,
Was for Juneteenth?
it was for the NAACP picnic.
Yeah, I think you would under those guidelines.
Yeah, so.
Good on Perkins?
I'm great on hurricanes. I just wanna say again, I like Ginny's thought on that, cause I think that was the, thought that I left with last time was like, how do we determine public versus private? And I think that that's a really great, way to do it. Can we hear from the expert on implementing? Do you see any issues with that?
Based on that, we're not gonna charge for anything, so, like a Hardwick football game, technically that's open to the public, right?
No, but it's not on city property.
I thought you said, or,
No, I said, well, and if it was held in New York Park, but it wasn't open to the public, then you could charge if you needed to cover for that.
okay, I thought you meant, or
No,
we were
I'm
providing a
saying-
service and it was closed to the public outside of,
no, what I'm saying, if it's not being held on city property, which would include Hardwick SUNY High School, possibly another location within the city or surrounding areas, or if it was held on city property, but it was closed to the public.
Well, I think we also need to acknowledge the costs that are involved though. I don't foresee that going away. I would still like to know from the 3 department heads that have to provide the services, what is incurred. I mean, right now, we're hearing from one of our department heads that they don't have enough staff. So,
Well, you both told us about the 4th of July event, and it was wild. Yours was like $9,000, and I think Chris said like 14. Maybe it was the opposite.
yeah, I got it here somewhere.
I don't have my notes from that, but I remember it being like kind of staggering.
Ours was like 4,200.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think Chris was 7.
okay, maybe it was 14 total, but it was a lot.
PD is actually $7,000 actual cost. Brian came up with basically $4,200.
Okay.
I think you asked the question about fees and they come out to, if we build on the fees, it would be $49.50 for the fire department.
That's right.
So it was
That's right.
close.
Yeah, so our fees are kind of on point for that.
Yeah. And the county treasurer still hasn't gotten back to you.
I have been really busy on trying to get the book closed, so I haven't communicated with the council about this.
So I think it's 45.
Anything else for tonight?
So what are your feelings on these fees? Is there anything you wanna see put forth? Any suggestions?
For me, I don't want restrictions to be able to get out and go to community events, because that's what the fire department is about in the community. So like when we put fire preventions, we do that all October. We get a ton of requests to come here, go there, to do these fire prevention programs, and if we have to charge it, like,
Well, if there was an education aspect, possibly we could, exclude that.
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Because most people aren't aware of some of the events that we do, like, we partner with,
Junior firefighter.
we partner with Home Depot and Lowe's, and we go over there, we send vehicles over, we're there all day long for just kids come by, they get to sit on the fire trucks. We put our ladder truck down so the kids can go in the bucket, we don't raise them up, but they can play with the different buttons and look at things, and just, those are good events that if, we had to charge for, we probably wouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
The trunk or treat events, like we get a ton of requests to do that, it seems like there's a new one every year for that. And we try and accommodate every every one of those events. So it's one of those things for me that, like, the requests keep going up and we're having to utilize off-duty staff to do it. Because if we're in the middle of some event, we can't just necessarily leave. So those people are committed there unless there's something that's major. So I want to balance all of that out. I want to be even more involved.
Good question.
So.
Do you have any ideas of how that could be done, or how you could see that happening?
I don't think we have enough time here tonight, but, I mean, allocating like a fire prevention line within the budget to where I know I have this much money to work on fire prevention type stuff, the educational piece per year, that's something that I would certainly look forward to, but obviously we know where the budgets are currently and for the future. So it's,
We can allocate money there, but we're not necessarily gonna add money.
Yeah.
Right.
it's
Right.
prioritizing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay.